people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy.
The undisputed super featherweight champion of the world, Alicia, the Bumgarner.
That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this, what is another look at the upcoming Sky Nicholson versus Sarah Mafud WBC featherweight title fight for what is the newly vacated WBC title that Amanda Serrano used to hold in her discord with WBC over 12 3-minute rounds in a women's boxing match. We've been all through that. This fight is set to go down on the undercard of Hitchens versus Lemos. Australian boxing has taken quite a few hits in the last couple of days. You know, Wilson lost to Valdez, Zarafa lost to Lara, Tszyu lost to Fundora.
Yeah.
It's all on Sky Nicholson now. Sky Nicholson, who sports a professional record of 9 wins with no losses, no draws, 1 recorded knockout. Only 1 recorded knockout against the former champion, former IBF featherweight champion, Sarah Mahfoud, in what is her bid to become a 2-time featherweight champion. More experienced than Sky. Sarah sports a professional record of 14 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 3 knockouts, 3 recorded knockouts, having never been knocked out in 15 professional bouts, which is saying a lot because she's been in there with the likes of Amanda Serrano, one of the hardest, most prolific punchers in the entire sport, and certainly at this weight. But Sarah heard the final bell. She survived.
Yeah.
She didn't get knocked out.
If Amanda didn't knock her out, there's not much chance that Sky Nicholson's gonna knock her out.
But I do still favor Sky Nicholson to beat her. I still favor Sky Nicholson to win a points decision this weekend because in spite of Sarah being a more experienced fighter than Sky Nicholson, I don't think she has as high a ceiling, and I don't think she's as good a physical specimen.
She's fast, very athletic. She's a southpaw, whereas Sarah, she's an orthodox fighter.
Sky has more raw talent to me than Sarah Mafud, even if Sarah is more experienced as a professional. Sarah, who last saw action in October of last year, she actually fought 3 times last year, which is good.
Why is that good?
No ring rust to shake off. She's been active, she's been fighting, she's been winning. She will be sharp the night of.
That's it.
The aesthetic of the match is going to be a bit of a wild card because both fighters are malleable fighters that can step into their jab on occasion or stay behind it
To be defensive.
Sarah Mahfoud spent the majority of the Serrano fight on the defensive, on her toes, moving around, staying outside of the pocket, knowing she couldn't trade punches with Amanda. But with Sky, she might take a little bit more chances because Sky's not the puncher that Amanda is. She's not as strong, doesn't have the same work rate. So maybe
Sarah will step into her punches a bit in this fight, show some spite, show some spice. She's got a halfway decent right hand.
But that's the wild card, knowing who's going to be the aggressor and who's going to be the defender. Sky Nicholson, who is still developing as a fighter, still rounding out her arsenal.
Adding to it.
She saw action 4 times last year, where Sarah Mahfoud fought 3 times, Sky fought 4. And Sky's coming off her first recorded knockout, her first professional knockout over Lucy Wildheart in November of last year. Both fighters have been active, have been busy, have been fighting and winning. So they'll both be as sharp as they can be the night of.
The wild card.
What you have in Sarah Mafud is a malleable fighter, an athletic one, and experienced, a former champion who can play both the aggressor and the defender when the situation calls for it. And in Sky, you have a young fighter with a high ceiling who's still developing and still adding tools to their toolbox. So it's not exactly clear who's going to be the aggressor and who's going to be the defender.
Then why are you so confident Sky wins?
Because of her amateur pedigree, what I notice about Sky is that she's better at the basics than Sarah Mafud. Her punches are sharper, faster, and more defensible.
She's got a great jab, too. I think that's Sky Nicholson's best weapon, her best weapon so far. She's got a great jab. jab, great dimensions for this weight, long and limber.
In truth, so is Sarah, but Sarah does look a little smaller and a bit more wiry than Sky Nicholson. Those things in mind, I like Sky Nicholson to win a points decision. I like Sky Nicholson to put Australian boxing on her back and back on the map, back in the winner's bracket, where it may have lost a champion this past weekend. It's going to gain one on Saturday.
Too real soon.
Forget about the Nina Hughes versus Shernika Johnson fight. I favor Shernika Johnson to take the WBA title away from Nina down there at bantamweight.
And I also happen to favor Jai Opataya to beat Mayris Briedis for the second time for the vacant IBF title.
Australian boxing's going to be just fine. As junior middleweight news, Oscar De La Hoya took to social media and stated, "Can't wait. The biggest money for both guys is Virgil Ortiz versus Terence Crawford."
What?
This was more or less Oscar's response to the possibility that the WBO title may soon go vacant on the premise that the WBO is ordering Sebastian Fundora to fight Terence and that he might drop that belt to fight somebody else.
Oscar's suggesting that Terence and Virgil should fight for it.
To which WBO President Paco Verasel replied, "Interesting. Are you sure?" Paco would likely be an interested party, as it was Paco Verasel who said, over a year ago I think, that they offered Virgil Ortiz that fight 2 times and he turned it down both times. That's what he said. Make of that what you will.
Looks like he's calling Oscar's bluff.
Calling everybody's bluff. Per a tweet from veteran boxing scribe Dake Jonovan, WBO has officially ordered Sebastian Fundora versus Terence Crawford. Sanctioning body honored pre-fight commitment to order the bout within 5 days of March 30th. Tszyu versus Fundora, as previously reported by Ring Magazine. The two sides have 20 days to reach terms.
That didn't take long.
So the speed of this order having come down so shortly after this past weekend's action, and thought to myself that WBO must be sympathetic towards Terence Crawford's plight, because they do seem to be working on his behalf, that one way or another he's going to get his shot. He'll get his chance to fight for that WBO title because he is the mandatory challenger.
Yeah, there's that. There's due process.
But there is also something to be said as to what effect the PBC has had on Terrence's career over the years. It's not a secret that they froze him out, of fights like the Danny Garcia fight, the Keith Thurman fight. They dragged their feet. They delayed the Errol Spence Jr. fight for years, and now it seemed like they were trying to backdoor him.
Freeze him out again.
You have Errol Spence Jr. sitting ringside saying that he wants the winner, even though by all rights it should be Terence getting the title shot, not the guy who got his ass kicked in his last fight.
I just get the sense that Paco and the people at the WBO, they see all this stuff. They've been seeing all this stuff for all these years, and they don't like it, so they're doing what they can. They're doing their job.
Perhaps they can't force Sebastian or any other PBC fighter to play ball and get in there with Terence Crawford. They can't do that, but what they can do is put them on the spot. That if you don't fight him and you don't comply, you're out. One of your 2 alphabet titles, the one you won this past weekend.
One of the 2, in this instance, the WBO.
I saw veteran trainer Kevin Cunningham advocating that his fighter, his charge, Erickson Lubricant, get a shot at Terence Crawford should the title go vacant. He's ranked at number 2 by way of the WBO. Josh Kelly's ranked at number 1, but I haven't seen Josh Kelly express an interest in fighting Terence for that belt, whereas Kevin Cunningham, he's speaking up.
His fight is ranked right behind Josh Kelly, and he wants him to get that opportunity.
Now, I could have swore that Erickson Lubin's last fight was a WBC eliminator for some version of a WBC trinket title, but now that Sergey Bohachuk is WBC interim champion, I guess Team Lubin are foregoing the WBC route for the WBO route.
With good reason.
Based on what we saw this past weekend, Sergey Bohachuk is a hot potato. He's a high risk, low reward, and if what you're angling for is a shot at the WBC title, you might have to go through him, and I don't think Team Lubin want to do that.
They'd rather fight Crawford.
For the vacant WBO title, what could be the vacant WBO title. Nothing is set in stone and no decisions have been made yet.
So you've got Oscar De La Hoya piping up, volunteering his charge, Virgil Ortiz, and you have Kevin Cunningham piping up, volunteering his charge, Erickson lubricant.
I don't think Oscar's serious. I don't think he's committed to putting Virgil in there with Terrence Crawford. He just sees everything that's happening at the weight, and he wants his fighter to at least be a part of that conversation. But he's not serious about making it because Virgil's only had one fight back, and that fight only lasted one round. Before that, he was out for over a year. You don't put him in there with Terrence under those circumstances, whereas Kevin Cunningham, I do think he's a bit more serious. He would like to make a fight between Terrence and Lubin.
But I don't think Terrence is interested in guys like Erickson Lubin at this point in his career. Moreover, the only real precedence for that fight would be if the WBO title goes vacant. We don't know if that's going to happen yet. It could, but it hasn't happened yet.
Can someone tell us exactly what the rematch clause says?
He knows there's a rematch clause there. He knows there's a rematch. If we want to take it, we'll take it. And, you know, I'd love to see Tim take that and win them belts straight back. So I'm happy for a rematch to happen next. And, you know, good luck trying to get out of it.
Can say something that I was very emotional in the press conference, and I say that the rematch, it was verbal. Whoever, I want to say this verbal, I will honor. So I forgot that word, that I will honor the rematch with Tszyu because he deserves it. He's a warrior. We have some kind of misunderstanding before the fight, but I give him all the credit. He deserves it, and he deserves a rematch. So that is in the plate.
Now, when you say that's in the plate, are you saying that you're changing the direction and it's no longer Earl Spence, or are you saying after Earl Spence, then you're going to give Tszyu the rematch?
I believe in this particular point, after, you know, that you relax, you think about it, I believe the best way will be the rematch. And because it's well deserved.
Sampson is flip-flopping the way he always flip-flops. Where on Saturday he was saying they would pursue Spence, now he's saying they're going to honor the rematch clause, which is little more than a verbal agreement, a gentleman's agreement. It's not on paper, it's not in the contract.
That must be why the people at Boxing Scene, ahead of the fight, said there is no rematch clause, that if Sebastian wins, he's not obligated to fight Tim Tszyu again.
It's what the story was before the fight. Now, after the fight, we're hearing about a verbal agreement that I'm not even sure is actionable, what is tantamount to a gentleman's agreement that I think Sampson could always go back on as soon as he feels like it, because he's a flip-flopper.
He is.
On Saturday, you say you're fighting Spence. On Monday, you say you're fighting Tim again. Which one is it?
How does that even happen?
According to Sampson, in his own words, we were all so eager to make this fight that many of our agreements were made verbally. There wasn't enough time, but I wish to make it clear that Team Fundora will honor the agreement. My word is always equal to a signed contract. Tim Tszyu, your rematch is ready when you are.
According to veteran boxing scribe Marcos Villegas, if Tszyu doesn't take it, Sampson says Fundora will take the WBO mandatory Crawford or Errol Spence Jr.
My thoughts. There have been a lot of pointless rematches in a sport that no one was asking for, like the rematch between Adonis Stevenson and Andrzej Fundora years ago, like the rematch between Deontay Wilder and Luis Ortiz, like the third installment of Fury versus Chisora. There have been a lot of rematches that had no precedent and no one was asking for them. But this fight, this potential rematch between Tim Tszyu and Sebastian Fundora, there is a precedent for it.
I still think the PBC was trying to catch Tim and his team with their pants down.
I still do. I'm still suspicious of them. I can only deduce that based on the opponents that are on the table and the mandatories they may have to satisfy, fighting Tim again may seem to Team Fundora like the lesser of two evils.
I'm sure they'd prefer to fight Spence coming off a loss, his first fight at 154.
I'm sure they would. That's why Sampson was carrying on the way he was carrying on not but 2 days ago. I'm sure that's what they would prefer, but they're not at liberty to do that without sacrificing something. If you fight Spence, you sacrifice the WBO title to Terrence Crawford.
Now Sampson says he's going to try to work it out to where everybody wins. I don't know how he's going to do that.
But if you were to try to fight Spence, you sacrifice the WBO title to Terrence. If you try to fight Spence, you leave Tszyu high and dry. You leave him in the air after he gave you this opportunity on short notice. You don't oblige him.
Some are less sympathetic than others towards the plight of Tszyu.
I mean, most people agree. The cut impaired his vision. He couldn't see, so he couldn't fight. He couldn't fight his fight. That's what most people think. But there is a minority of individuals who are less than sympathetic, bringing up how Artur Beterbiev, he suffered a gash on his forehead. There was blood everywhere, but he still beat Marcus Brown.
I've seen some people saying that, bringing that up.
The thing about that fight is that while Artur Beterbiev was able to power through it, Marcus Brown was not a short notice opponent. Artur Beterbiev didn't spend his entire camp or most of it preparing for one guy, then having to fight another. That's not what went down, whereas that's exactly what happened to Tszyu.
It's not the same thing. It's not comparable.
And Artur Beterbiev did not have to fight a guy that is unusually tall and long for the weight, the way that Sebastian is unusually tall and long for the weight. It's an awkward assignment, even with preparation. Without preparation and a gash leaking blood into your eye.
A freak accident.
No, I don't blame Sebastian Fundora for what happened, and I don't deny that he did do enough to beat Tszyu. He fought the right fight under those circumstances, but until those circumstances became what they became, he got his nose busted and his mouth busted.
In just the first 2 rounds.
He was well on his way to losing that fight in just the first 2 rounds. Tszyu was timing him with the right hand up the middle,
busting him up.
It wasn't until that cut was opened over Tszyu's head that his vision became impaired, and suddenly he couldn't see, he couldn't time the right hand anymore. He found himself pawing at his face, trying to rub the blood out of his eyes. Surely you can understand how that might affect a fighter's ability to fight.
Some people don't want to.
Well, that's because some people are fucking stupid, because it's not rocket science. It's not hard to understand. His vision is impaired, and he's fighting an unusually tall fighter who's staying behind his jab and being prolific with it. He can't see the jabs, thus he can't get past them, and he can't time his own right hand to stop the guy from throwing at him.
I favor Timmy to win the rematch.
I favor him to do it, but I think it was foolhardy from the very beginning. I think it was foolhardy to jump into bed with these people, to do business with them, thinking they would do business with you in good faith. I think this whole time they've been trying to screw him over, trying to catch him with his pants down.
I think they should take the rematch back to Australia is what I think.
Out there, you can sell it. Out there, it can be a big fight, a big event. Bigger than it would be here. Let's not pretend that Sebastian Fundora or Tszyu are household names in America. They're not, even as a result of this past weekend's fight. Whereas in Australia, you could do this at Marvel Stadium.
Yeah.
You could bill it as a pay-per-view on Foxtel in Australia and a regular fight on Amazon here in America.
That's if Samson sticks to his word. He might not. On Saturday, it was about Spence. On Monday, it's back to Tszyu.
Probably to avoid Terrence Crawford.
The same day the WBO's order comes down is the same day he decides they want to give Timmy a rematch. Is that a coincidence?
Been a lot of pointless rematches in the sport of boxing that we've had to endure, but this would not be one of them. There's a precedent for a second fight. If not for that cut, I'm 100% sure Tim would have won that fight. Tim would have knocked him out because he was well on his way to doing it after just 2 rounds.
Give him the chance he gave you.
For a moment there, it looked like they were going to make off like bandits. Maybe they're not. We'll see.